Well, after his first attempt last fall, he's been even more obsessed with completing the trail, even though he initially said he would never do it again. But that did not last very long. So instead of retrieving the caches, we started replacing them already shortly after his failure. And he then trained very focused for a year. He arranged all his races specifically to help him get ready for the ODT. And we've been out there a lot, training on the actual terrain and trail. And I think that was very important. Also, the fact that he was able to learn a lot of things. So his initial goal was to start again at the beginning of June 2016, right after his lectures ended at PSU. But by then he couldn't even run yet at all. In May, he got this very bad poison ivy reaction too, and that somehow led to massive shin issues that prevented him from running. So that was a very rough time. And a few days before the planned start, he was forced to push back the start by at least a month. So then the next possible start was July 12th. And in the meantime, really, despite the injury, he never stopped moving. He just did something else than running. For a month, he basically cross-trained, mostly with climbing mountains. This was also his way of getting ready, actually, for the 5 Oregon Peaks Challenge that he wanted to do after the ODT. So even though it was hard to push back the ODT start, it's not like it was lost time. So on weekends, we would often just get out there on the ODT to drop caches and to train. So he would set up camp somewhere, and for a day he would just climb up and down some mountain relentlessly because he couldn't run. But even though that worked pretty well with the cross-training, as we got closer to the new starting date, it was still pretty unclear whether he could even start. Actually, it was very unclear, because he thought he might have a stress fracture at that point, and that would obviously have been the end of the season. So there was still a lot of uncertainty. He basically started with still a lot of shin pain, and it was very unclear how far he would make it. But nonetheless, on July 11th, we just drove to Prineville as planned right after work. And after just a few hours of sleep, it was time to get up and drive to the start. I don't think we were ever able to find that trailhead right away in our first attempt. We always somehow missed the turnoff, and this time was no different. So that added some unnecessary stress, but we finally made it there sometime right before 5 a.m. It was still dark. And after getting ready, he left shortly after 5, right as the sun was starting to come up. And at that point, I had not the slightest idea for how long I would not see him again from then on. So yeah, then it was time for me to drive home. It was about a 3-hour drive, and all the way I kept checking the satellite responder to see where he was at, if he was still moving. I knew that his goal was gonna be to finish in 17 days, but with his injuries, I had no idea it could take a lot longer than that. And on the other hand, I was actually almost more afraid that he would be back right away if something was keeping him up or if the injuries got worse. So I had no idea what was happening. It didn't look that great at that point, I have to say.